Hi, welcome to my new unit on complex numbers. This is the first video and it's on the definition of a complex number. A complex number has the form of a plus bi, where a is the real part and bi is the imaginary part. Let's do some examples. State each part. Example, 4 plus 3i. The real part is 4. The imaginary part is 3i. In this one, b, negative 2 plus 5i. Real part is negative 2. And 5i is the imaginary. And notice they're positives. C, a half, subtract 6i. Real part is a half. The imaginary part is a negative 6i. And D, negative 4 over 7, subtract 1 over 4i. The real part is negative 4 over 7, and the imaginary part is a negative 1/4 I. So no imaginary begins with I, so it's I's. The reals have no I's. Write each as a complex number as A plus BI. So if we have a negative 6, then as a complex number, it's a negative 6 plus 0i because there's no imaginaries. 13 is 13 plus 0i. Again, there's no i's. C, 2i. There's no real part, but 2i is imaginary. And a negative 4 over 9i is 0, subtract 4 over 9i, as written as the complex form of a plus bi. Write each as a complex number as a plus bi. So that's 6 is the real part. And the imaginary part, notice you have a square root of a negative 4, so that's a add on. Square root of 4 is 2, and because it's negative is an I. And b, the square root of 9, subtract the square root of negative 16. The square root of 9 is 3, so real part is 3. Subtract square root of negative 16 is, square root of 16 is 4, and because it's a negative number, I have an I. C, notice we have square root of a negative 25, so that's 5i, because the square root of 25 is 5. Because it's a negative number, we got an I, and the real part, there's no real part, so we just put 0 plus 5i. D, again, we have imaginary parts because it's the square root of a negative number. So we have a 0 plus square root of 4 is 2, square root of 49 is 7, so it's 2 over 7. And because it's the square root of a negative number, we have an I. And E, the real part is negative 7, and the imaginary part is the square root of 81 is 9 with an I, because the square root of a negative number has an I. F, the negative square root of 100, so it's the negative root square root of 100 is 10. Subtract the square root of 64 is 8. And notice there's no negative numbers inside the root, so they're all real, so that's a negative 18. So it's a negative 18 plus 0i. Notice 64 is positive, so it's an 8. 100 is positive, so it's a 10. So that gives a negative 18 plus 0i. And number 4, G, that's a 4 is the real part, plus, and the square root of 12 is 4 times 3, so that's a 2, and because it's negative, we got an I and a root 3. Okay, writing it as, remember, imaginary numbers, a plus bi, where a is the real part and bi is the imaginary part. Okay, let's do some of these. Practice means pause the video and work these out. Name each part. So we have 7 plus 3i. The real part is 7. The imaginary part is a 3i. B, the real part is a negative a half. The imaginary part is negative 4i. Write each as a plus bi. That's negative 6, so that's the negative 6, the real part, and there's no imaginary part, so 0i. And in this one we got a 9i, there's no real part, the 9i is imaginary. And number 3, again, pause the video and work these out. Here we go. Express each as a plus bi. Again, a is the real part, bi is the imaginary in this complex number. So we get a is 7 plus the square root of negative 1 is an I. We got a negative 10 and subtract square root of negative 4 is square root of 4 is 2 with an I. And we have 4 plus 9. The root of 9 is 4. The root of 9 is 3. That gives me a 7. So as an imaginary number, it gives me 7 plus 0i. And the square root of negative 64, it has no real part. Plus, square root of 64 is 8. Because it's negative, we have an I. E, we got 2/3 is the real part. And the imaginary part, square root of 25 is 5 with an I. So notice you always simplify the square root of a negative number with an I. That's the imaginary part. F, square root of 9 over 100 is 3 over 10. Plus, the square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2. And because it's negative, we have an I. And this one, we have a negative 5. Subtract. And this 20 is 4 times 5. So the square root of 4 is 2. And because it's negative, we have an I and a root 5. I prefer to, again, in relation to the root, I prefer to put the I in front of the root. 2i root 5. Ask your teacher. Ask your teacher about writing 2 root 5i. I prefer to put the I in front. Ask your teacher about putting the I behind. So that brings us to the end of defining what an imaginary complex number is. A complex number is made up of a real part and an imaginary part. If you like my video, click the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, because more videos are coming. Visit my website, www.mathfullyexplained.com, to find more information about me, my videos, and the content. And that's the content that's in my YouTube channel called Math Fully Explained. Thank you for viewing my video. Bye-bye.